Hi, dear students. We are together at the introduction to our or at the summary of our chapter 2 in our course book Foreign Trade. So the title of this chapter is the Classical Trade Theory and Standard Theory of International Trade, and with this video I would like to give a summary for our chapter. In the second chapter of our book, we are dealing with the classical trade theory and standard theory of international trade. Here comes the chapter outline. The first title of our chapter is The Rise of International Trade Theory and Mercantilism. The second title is The Birth of the Theory of International Trade, Classical Liberalism. The third chapter is the comparative advantage with opportunity costs and production possibilities. And the third and the last title is the standard theory of international trade. Under the first title, The Rise of International Trade Theory and Mercantilism, we are dealing mostly with the mercantilism and then the birth of the international trade theory. So what is mercantilism? According to mercantilism, main objective of international trade policy is to increase gold stock. Because in those times or in the centuries of 18th century and 19th century, the instrument or the instrument of the welfare was the gold stock of the country, or in other words, the welfare determinant of a country is the stock of precious metals that it has or it had in those times. So that was the main mercantilist idea. So in this respect, the countries wanted or sought to collect as much as or as many as precious metals that they can, because once their stock of precious metals, mostly the gold, increases, then that will show the other countries that this country is a prosperous country, is a welfare state. And the international trade was pursued by gold, or the instrument of the exchange in international trade was gold and the other precious metals. So the countries were protecting their international trade, or they were imposing restrictions on their trade in order to collect more gold or the other precious metals. So that was the main idea of mercantilism. Mercantilist view postulates that international trade is a zero-sum game. So what is a zero-sum game? It states that the country gains in the expense of another. So suppose that two countries are trading and one of them is imposing restrictive trade policies, like imposing tariffs or quotas in order to collect more gold or more precious metals. In this case, this country will gain, but in the expense of its partner. So this state or this status or this circumstance is called a zero-sum game. So a part gains in the expense of other. Mercantilism was first questioned or first criticized by David Hume in 1950s. Then Adam Smith's theory of absolute advantage followed David Hume's price spatial flow mechanism. Then we see the birth of the theory of international trade, the classical liberalism. At the second title of our book, we are dealing with this birth of or the ending up the mercantilist view or mercantilist idea, and the birth of the theory of classical liberalism or the theory of international trade. Here comes the famous book of Adam Smith titled Wealth of Nations. This book constitutes the basis of classical liberalism and school of classical economics. Adam Smith, with his theory of absolute advantage, proved that mutual beneficial trade is possible, meaning that international trade is a positive sum game. So if there are two countries that are trading, then according to the positive sum game, both countries can gain from this international trading. So beneficial trade is possible for both countries. Classical liberalism was improved by David Ricardo with his theory of comparative advantage. But I should remind you that both theories, both the theory of absolute advantage and the theory of comparative advantage were depending on the labor theory of value, meaning that they considered or they have taken into consider only the labor as the factor of production. They didn't taken into consideration or they didn't taken the capital as the second factor of production into the analysis. So that was the main weakness of the both theories. Then this weakness was compensated by the opportunity costs and production possibilities. So in this third chapter, a third title of our book, we see the theory of comparative advantage explained by the opportunity costs and production possibilities. Then comes the standard theory of international trade. In this standard theory of international trade model, we use the production possibilities frontiers, community indifference curves, and offer curves. Thus, the standard theory of international trade incorporates both the supply and demand conditions. We, the economists, we determine the price of a commodity or a service in the market, and in determining the price, we use the supply and the demand. So in this standard theory of international trade, we incorporate both the supply and the demand conditions. The supply conditions are expressed by the production possibilities frontiers, and the demand conditions are expressed by the community indifference curves.